a $160 million artwork found at the house of a couple. His world fell apart when the call came. The FBI had described to him in detail what his favorite aunt and uncle had done, but he still didn't trust them, feeling like a deer in headlights. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. It seemed impossible for the family members he knew and loved to have been involved in one of the most significant crimes of the 1980s. However, a worry began to creep into his thoughts. Do we truly know the individuals in our immediate vicinity? How well known are our neighbors, friends, and family members? Ron Grossman, a native of Houston, thought Rita and Jerome Alter were excellent residents. In their neighborhood, both friends and neighbors regarded them with great affection and education. Both of them were educators who had amassed sufficient funds to visit every continent. Ron was especially enthralled with his uncle's tales, but he would not discover another tale about Jerome and Rita's covert existence until much, much later. The Alters appeared to be typical middle-class folks who moved to Cliff, New Mexico in the 1970s. Jerry had a passion for adventure, art, and travel, and Rita was a beacon of compassion to everyone she came into contact with. She was a speech pathologist and was quite supportive of Jerry's decision to leave his career as a music teacher at the early age of 48 in order to explore more upscale interests. The neighbors claimed that even though they were familiar with the Alters, they preferred to keep to themselves. The couple was keeping a huge secret, which no one ever guessed. Rita died 5 years after Jerry, who died in 2011 of natural causes. 2 grown-up children, Joseph and Barbara, were left behind. The Alters' crime would never have been discovered if Ron Grossman hadn't been appointed executor of their estate, simply because he resided the closest to Cliff, New Mexico. When Ron made the decision to list the Alters' Cliff house for sale, he invited a bevy of vendors to see their belongings. In a few days, the majority of them were seized in a frenzy and carried off. The highest bidder won paintings, furniture, and African antiques, and David Van Walker of Silver City took home the entire haul for just $2,000. Although Ron wasn't exactly thrilled with the $2,000, he was relieved to finish off his late aunt and uncle's inheritance. He had no idea that among the things the antique merchant had loaded into his car that day was something quite valuable. Ron had no idea that this specific object had been the subject of a 33-year investigation, and that the case was about to come to a dramatic conclusion. David Van Walker was ecstatic with the deal he discovered. His gaze kept returning to one specific item as he started to sift and value the things he had bought for a pittance. When he looked at it, he had a sense that he just couldn't describe, but he wouldn't find out what it was until he started to delve more into the mystery. When David got back to his house in Pinos Altos that evening, he placed the labor of the day in the back of his mind. But the next day, one of his recently bought items was turning heads in the community. One day, a perceptive artist entered Manzanita Ridge Antiques, David's antique business, and said the 5 words that caused the FBI to call Ron Grossman. "That aunt and uncle are my favorites," Ron reminisced. I just couldn't imagine. My mind was racing with scenarios, like a deer caught in headlights, I felt. Ron first hesitated to accept the accusations made by the FBI against Jerry and Rita, but eventually the truth set in. Could one of the most heinous heists in American history have been done off by his cherished aunt and uncle? The time is November 25th, 1985 in the morning. At Tucson, Arizona's biggest and busiest museum, a lone security officer is opening the entrance to let a staff member through. The pair, who were not well known at the time, approached to strike up a discussion despite the early hour and the museum's unofficial opening. Looking to be in her 60s, the woman talks aimlessly to the security guy about everything and everything that comes to mind. As they converse about art and the weather, a guy stealthily enters the building and makes his way to the 3rd level. After a little while, the male unexpectedly reappears at the woman's side. They dash back into a 2-door sports automobile that is rust red. Feeling uneasy, the security guard decides to investigate after becoming suspicious that the pair left without entering the museum. Since the museum lacked security cameras in 1985, it was impossible to capture the individual in the act. The security guard looks at the empty frame on the 3rd level and soon recognizes what has happened. Missing is the valuable artwork Woman Ochre by well-known Dutch painter Willem de Kooning. All that's left is a rectangular patch of canvas where a blade was used to remove the artwork from its frame. The guard's description of the enigmatic pair and their getaway vehicle was the only lead the police had, as they were unable to locate any fingerprints. During the mid-century Expressionist movement, Willem de Kooning was a well-known abstract painter whose works are extremely significant. A remarkable $137.5 million was paid for one picture when it was auctioned. Before an unassuming trader in Silver City understood what he had sitting in his antique store, the renowned art robbery of Woman Ochre had been unsolved for 30 years. When an artist entered David Van Walker's store and saw the abstract artwork he had purchased from the altars, he immediately shouted, "That's a Willem de Kooning!" It wasn't until he'd done some study that he realized how unlikely it was that he would come onto such an important chapter in history. His eyes widened as he read an article about the stolen artwork from the Arizona Museum of Art. As soon as David recognized what he possessed, his amazement immediately gave way to anxiety. He had to keep it out of sight from curious eyes. He transferred the 40 by 30-inch picture to the toilet, which was ironically the only door in the business that latched, and secured it there. "We were afraid someone would bash it or flick paint off it, so that's when we decided we'd pick it up and stick it somewhere safe," Van Walker recounted later. He then gave the Tucson Museum a call. Olivia Miller, curator of the UAMA, stated, "I had daydreams of getting that phone call, of someone calling up, or someone mysteriously sending a package with the painting inside of it. I don't think I honestly thought it would actually happen." Naturally, Olivia was first dubious of David's discovery. Then, David revealed an important information that altered the course of events. What really stuck out, Olivia Miller recalled, was when he stated, "There were lines across it, like if it's cracked, like it's been rolled up." I was taking it seriously, but that really made me stop. All right, that's just a minor thing that no one should discuss. At that point, Chief Brian C. Stone received a call. After more than 30 years of investigating the theft of the de Kooning artwork, Chief Brian C. Stone never lost hope that he would eventually solve the case. "I simply felt like that," C. Stone continued. Thus, 32 years later, I witnessed the tears of gladness and love as it truly returned home. Soon later, the picture was closely inspected, and it was discovered that the signature was real. The genuine thing was the artwork. What was the most unexpected detail? For more than 30 years, the altars had stored it long behind their bedroom door, out of sight. The fairly unremarkable duo appears to have been the ones to steal the picture, according to new evidence. According to my own opinion, which might be completely incorrect, the artwork was intended for their private display when I first saw it hanging in the house, according to Buck Burns, a co-owner of an antique store, not for anybody else. It was hanging behind that door, out of sight, while the door was open. However, the most damning evidence had been there in front of everyone's nose the entire time. The Cup and the Lip is a collection of short tales that Jerome Jerry Alter wrote in 2011. A fictional narrative in one of the stories describes a mother and her daughter robbing a museum of a 120-carat gem by diverting the guard, taking the treasure, and driving off in a getaway car. Upon their arrival at home, they place the diamond in a hidden panel to be viewed only by themselves. However, Ron Roseman refuses to accept that his uncle and aunt were complicit in the heist. "I simply cannot fathom that they would," he lamented. "I didn't know an aunt and uncle like that." Regretfully for him, further evidence implicating Jerry and Rita Alter was discovered in 2018, which is undoubtedly thought-provoking. A picture of Jerry and Rita was discovered in 2018. It was taken in Tucson on Thanksgiving in 1985, the day before the de Kooning work was photographed. It was dated 1985. Jerry was driving a red sports car identical to the one the security officer had reported on the day the artwork was taken, according to a picture found in the altar's private collection. A lot of people also think that Jerry and Rita Alter look a lot like the police sketch of the couple that was done in 1985. In addition, no one can explain how the two instructors, who had meager wages, could afford to travel so much and possess a 20-hectare property in Cliff, New Mexico, if that's not enough proof against them. There have been no arrests yet, and the inquiry is still ongoing. Although it's impossible to know for sure, All the evidence points to the pair committing one of the biggest art crimes of the 20th century and getting away with it. The Arizona Museum now has the de Kooning artwork Woman Ochre back, where presumably it will stay safe. An appraisal of more than $160 million has been assigned to it. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.